Hello, this is Benny's Code, and today we will be making a quiz app in React. So as you can see on the screen now, it will display stuff like the question that you're on, the question itself, and the options that you have to answer it. So let's get this one correct, and it will display if you got it correct or not. Get this one wrong. Get this one correct. Get this one correct again, and it will display the results in percentage. So if it's above 50%, you'll get green, and if it's below, you will get red. And then you have this try again button, which will reset everything, and you can try again. Awesome. Let's get right into the code. So I have Visual Studio Code pulled up now. If you have a different editor, that will be fine. In our terminal, which if it's not automatically up, you can drag it up or click this and navigate over to terminal. So I'm in my projects folder. You can be in whatever folder you want, but I will be creating a new folder for this quiz app. So we can just type in mkdir for make directory and then the name of the directory that you want to make. So I'm just going to call it quiz-toot. Make that. Now that that's there, we can go up to File, Open Folder, navigate to that quiz, and select the folder. Now it will be empty, but we can drag that terminal back up again and create the React app. So we will do that by mpx create-react-app, and we want to create it in the folder that we're already in, so we will put a period after that. Click enter and let it load. Alright, once that's done loading and you have all these files here, we can hop into the source folder and start cleaning up a little bit. So this app.test.js we can delete, and this setup tests we can delete, and the logo we can delete. Awesome. Okay, so now that's there, we can hop into the index.js, remove the strict mode, as we will not need that. Format this back into place, save that file, and hop into our app.js and delete everything except for the div. So just the whole header we can delete and format that. This logo on line 1 we can delete. And awesome. So I am going to create 2 folders, one for the API, the test questions, just to be able to test the app. You can write out your own questions, that is totally fine. But for the code that we'll be writing, the data will need to match the same format. So we can go to source, create a API folder. Now in this folder, we can create a file, and we can call that quizdata.js. Now in here, I'm going to copy all of the questions from my GitHub, and the link in the description will lead you directly to this page. You can then click on source, click on the API folder, and then click on this quiz data file and copy all of this. Copy that and make our way back to the code and paste it in here. So we will want to be exporting it. Make sure you got the export for the variable name, which is up here. And let's walk through, or we can save this and let's walk through how this is structured. So we will have an array that is questions. So we can loop through each question, and then we have the question itself, which will be displayed, and the answers, which is an array, which we can then also loop through and display each one of the options. And then we have a correct answer index. So what this will do is we can use this to check whether or not the user got it correct. So this is number 1, which is indicating to this because indexes start at 0. So since this is number 1, once the user clicks on an answer, we'll check the index of which one they clicked on, and then if it matches up to this one, then they got it correct. If not, they got it wrong. So just a few questions here, and let's hop back over to our actually let's create a second folder called components, and let's create a file inside of that called quiz.js. Alright, now that we have this, we can RFCE, or type in RFCE, click enter, and if that option doesn't show up for you, that is fine. You can just type out this and add some semicolons. Alright, so now that this is here, we can, first step is to go back to our app.js, or actually save the file. Don't want to mistakenly not save the file. Go back to our app.js and import this component that we just made. So we can import quiz from, and it should be ./components/quiz, semicolon after this, and now in here you can just give it some room and use it. So quiz, just like that. Alright, now to make sure that this is working, we can go back to our terminal and click in npm start. Now this should automatically open a window in your browser, but if it does not, you can check the local host that you're on. It should be 3000 by default, but if it is not, you can just find it in the terminal here, copy it, put it in your browser, and it should be good. Okay, so now that we have the quiz rendering all good, we can start working on the component itself. So the first step would be to import the data that we just copied in there. So we can import quiz data, data from .. to go back a folder, and then select the folder API/quiz data, and that should be good. Alright, so now we need a use state, so we'll put a comma after React and import use state. We're gonna have a lot of use states. Alright, now after the function declaration, we can create our first state, const, and then we can name it display question. Now this is going to tell us which question to be displaying. So we can go set display question, and now we can equal it to use state, and we will start it off as 0, so it gives us the first one in the array of questions. Alright, save that, and now instead of just having quiz, we can delete that, open it up, and put in h2, and we can say JavaScript quiz. Alright, now that we have that, we could start off by making a bottom navigation for the next and back buttons to change this state here. So we can do that by just creating another div inside of here, and we can make that div, and then we can give it a class, open that up, give it a class name of quiz dash nav. That should be good. and then we can put 2 buttons in here. Like that. Copy that down. And in here we could have, first one will be prev for previous. And then we could have a next button. Now in these, we need an onClick. So when you click on them, it will call a function. We're going to onClick equals, we can name this the handle back button, BTN for short. And then let's do the same on here. onClick equals handle next button. Alright, awesome. Now let's make these functions so that way they do something. Alright, so we can pop a few new lines here and start writing out the next function. So we can call it handle next button equals arrow function, the proper syntax, and then we can set the display question to the display question itself plus 1. So now every time you click it, it will add 1 to the initial or the current index of display question. Close that off, and then we can console log that value just to make sure it's working. Awesome. And now the only problem with this is that we are setting this plus 1, but if the user is at the last question and then clicks the next button again, it will add 1 to it will make the display question index higher than the actual questions, so it just doesn't exist. So to fix that, we can put in an if statement that says that checks if display question is less than the display the quiz data dot questions dot length. There we go. So as long as it's under the actual length of the questions, then we can add to it. Let's put some curly brackets here and wrap it around the set function. And now later we'll have an else here to display the results if we are at the end of the questions. But for now, let's just copy all of this, paste it down, and rename this to back button. Ooh, whoops, there's an H there. Yeah, handle back button. And this will be different. This just has to be greater than or equal to the 1. So as long as it's greater than or equal to 1, you're allowed to set it -1 to decrease the index. Because if it's 0, we don't want to decrease it. Otherwise, it's going to be a negative number, and that won't work because we don't have a negative index in the questions. Awesome. So now that these are up and working, we can test them out, going back over to our browser and seeing if they console log. So let's refresh just to make sure the code is refreshed, and then we can click next and it'll display 0, even though it's at 1 right now because it's console logging right before it actually gets set. But if we click it again, it goes to 1, 2, 3, and then awesome, that it won't go any further than that, which is good. And then previous, we can go back down and it won't go below 0, or it won't go below 1 right now, but it's actually at 0. Sorry if that's a little confusing. The reason why that is because the set function here takes a second to actually set its value, and I'm just console logging it here, so it's just behind 1, but it is getting set. Awesome. Now we can add, well, we already have the class name for this, so let's add a class name to our main container. So we can name this quiz-container and save that, and work our way over to the app.css. And in here we can delete everything except the very first one that has text align center. And in here we can start writing out the quiz nav. Actually, maybe we should start with the quiz container. So the quiz container is going to have quite a lot of CSS. We can do container just like that, and then we can start off by margin auto to center it, and margin top just to give it a little bit of room so it's not sitting right at the very top. And then we can add some padding, which is the inside of it, so all the content inside of it is pushed in a little further. We can just put something small like 15 pixels, and then we can do width, and that would be, let's make it 65 VW, and VW is how big the screen is. So if you make the screen smaller, it'll take up less room and it will scale with the screen. So it's going to take up 65% of the screen width basically. And then background, we can add a background, and I'm gonna put var -- gradient. Now I have some preset variables, CSS variables that we can actually add to the top. I'm just going to copy this. This will all be on the GitHub. Put it right here. And what this will do is make it global so you can access it in other files. And the gradient here is just some preset colorings. Then I have a color scheme picked out, and we can access them by just saying my gray or my blue, stuff like that. So instead of writing out this color code every single time, we can just write this out. All right, awesome. Now that this gradient is here and should be working, we can keep adding to it. So let's add a box shadow, which will just put a little shadow in the background. We can make this 0, 0, and then 1 rem. And then let's add a RGBA of just a relatively dark color, and just make it 0.5, so that way it will blend, the transparency of it will blend to our background that we will add later. Awesome. Now let's add a very small border radius which will round the corners, and we can do 0.5 rem for that and save that. Awesome. Now that that's saved, we can add some styling to our buttons on the bottom, which we named quiz nav. So quiz -nav. Now we can put display flex to make them display inline, so from left to right opposed to top to bottom. Put flex, and then justify content space around, so they're spaced out. Let's go, yeah, space around right there. Save that, and then we can access the buttons within this div here. So we can copy this down, add another bracket here, open that up. So now to access the two buttons that we have, to access these two buttons, even though they don't have a quiz, a class name, if this class is here, we can access this class, and then right after it, click button. So now this styling will be applied to every button inside of this quiz nav. So we can first add a font family, which will be the variable we set up top called font mono. And then we can add a box shadow, which is actually going to be the same as this one. So we can just copy that and bring it down here. A border radius, which will also be the same. Where is it? Oh, actually, no, it will be very close. Okay, so border, dash radius will be 0.5 rem. And then we can add a small amount of margin to this, which is 5 pixels. 5 pixels. And then font size, we are going to want large. Actually, I did make a mistake up here. We want this to be border dash radius, just like we have on the buttons. Awesome. Now let's save that. Take a look at the site, and there we go. Looking much better already. Buttons are a little bigger, spaced out, and awesome. So now the functionality still works, and let's get to the next thing. All right, let's now add a background to the body, so that the whole page has a background to it. Let's delete this font family since we have a font family of our own, and we can add a background color. So background color equals var dash dash my dark blue, and then add the font family to be the var font family that we declared before, which is font dash mono. Awesome, that should work. Control save. Hop back over to the browser. Awesome. Okay, so that worked. Go back to the code and let's hop back into quiz. So now we can actually access the data and start writing out the questions. So I'm just gonna add a fragment between the header and the nav. We are going to use a fragment because we don't need to be adding any classes to this. It's going to have divs within it. So let's first add an h2 that will display what question we're on. So we can say question. And now I am going to put this so that way it's encapsulated. And I'm going to start off with writing a span, so that way we can put special styling on the first letter, but not, or the first number, not the second. And let's add a style to this. Oops. Style equals double curly bracket, color equals our green, which is going to be 4CCEAC. Awesome, that should be good. And then inside the span, we're gonna put more curly brackets and put the index. So we're gonna do display question +1. So the index is always going to be less than one of the actual question. So if it's the first one, the index is going to be 0, but we want to display the number 1 because we're on the first one. So +1 will work for that. And then after this span, we can put slash and then put the second variable, which will be quiz data dot questions dot length. Awesome. So now this should be displaying, if we save it, displaying that. Awesome, that works. Oh, we forgot our last, we forgot to match this one. So let's put it right here, just like that. Awesome. Now that we have that there, we can pop a new line inside this fragment and put 3 more lines. And then we can start our div that will hold the options. All right, awesome. Let's make a div. Add a class name that we will call quiz-options that we will customize later. Ooh, whoops. All right, open that up, and now we can put another h2 that will have a class name of of question. Awesome. And now after that, we can actually, we're not going to have anything inside of the H2. We're going to dangerously insert it. Dangerously insert HTML and underscore underscore HTML is going to be quiz data dot questions at the index of our display question value, and then dot question. So the reason I'm doing this dangerously set inner HTML instead of just putting it inside the H2 here is to be able to let's look at the quiz data. So I have a code HTML tag here, and that will normally just be rendered as a string and you'll be able to see it, but I don't want that. So the dangerously set inner HTML uses this and it doesn't show it. So that way this will be a different font and it will have the tag of code around it. Awesome. Now that we have that, we can check to see if it works. Pop back, and awesome. Looks like it's working and good. Now we can map through everything, or map through all of the answers to display each one that you can click on. After the H2, or after the question, pop a few new lines and start mapping out each one. So we're going to need brackets to put JavaScript in, and quiz data dot questions at the index of our display index, or display question, dot answers, answers dot map. So what this will do is map through each answer, or each option that the user has to click, and we will make this arrow function. So we're going to need two things: the answer, so the actual option, and then we're going to need the index as well for the key, and also we'll be sending it to a function later on to check to see if it's the right answer or not. All right, now this is going to be a arrow function. We'll open that up and then return just like that. And let's return a big button. So button, we're going to go like this, and then we're going to have quite a few fields on this. So let's break this down into another line too. Tab in, and first we're going to use the index to set a key, because React wants a key for every item that's being mapped out. So we'll put the index in here, and then we'll add a class name to this to style it. We can name this quiz dash option dash container. Awesome. And now we can add an onClick that will display the index just for now, and then we can add an actual function to check whether or not it's correct. So in here, we'll just make an arrow function and console.log. Let's just do the index of that question. Awesome. Now we can add an H3 inside of here, inside of the button. So within the H3, we can add that answer that is being given to us through the map. Awesome. Now once we save that and head back to our screen, these buttons should be displaying. Okay, awesome. They don't have any styling yet. We'll get to that. And awesome. So it should, so this is the third index. So this should be, okay, awesome. It's console logging third. This should console log 0, and it does. Amazing. Awesome. Now if we click next, undefined reading question. Cannot read properties, undefined reading question. Okay, so the error was being caused by this up here. This needed to be minus 1. So before it was just less than the length, but it needs to be less than the length minus 1. Awesome. So now that that is saved, we can hop back over to this and check it out, see if it works. Console log 0, good. Go to next. Console logs 3, 2, 1, 0. Awesome, and we get to go through all of the questions and won't go forward. Awesome, so we have a little bit here. Let's style up these buttons and make it look a lot nicer. Alright, so I'm going to put the quiz options right under the quiz container. So quiz-options, open that up. Let's put a margin 0 auto to center it. Then we can do a max width of 90% so that way it doesn't stretch too far. Display, we're gonna want flex as before, and then we can add a flex dash flow and put this as row wrap, so that way it wraps into the next row instead of just being all in the same line. Let's make this a let's put justify content center to center the inner content, and that should be good with that one. And now let's go below that and customize the quiz dash options option container. Awesome. Now we can do width of 40%. Save that. Let's put a font family of that var that we saved before. So font family dash dash font mono. Awesome. Whoops. Awesome. Scroll down a little bit, and we got a box shadow on here. Let's put a box shadow, same as before. So let's actually just copy this down, and same with the border radius. So we're going to copy both of these down all the way into here. Remove this. Great. And now that that's the same, we can add a margin of just a small amount. Let's do 3%. Just give it a little bit of room. And then we can add a background color of the dark blue. So let's go var dash dash my dark blue, just like that, and then put the font color, which is just color, as white, so it pops out a little more. Awesome. Now we can move down to the question. Dot question. Whoops. Dot question, and let's add the box shadow and border radius that we had up here. So copy this down, whoops, put it in there, add a margin of a very small amount. Let's do 1%, and padding of 5 pixels. Color, to customize the font, let's do the exact opposite of before. Do my dark blue, and then have a background color of that white. Awesome. Let's save this, hop back over to our, awesome, yeah. All right, so now it's displaying in the proper row flex or row wrap. So without the row wrap, these all would be in the same row, but since we put a max width on it and row wrap, it will break into a new row once the room is taken up. Awesome. These buttons still work and looking a lot nicer. Awesome. And this will be it for part 1. See you in part 2 when we add a whole bunch of functionality and really get this working. Awesome. See you then. Hopefully you enjoy.